2024 was the year where finances in AAA gaming were at the top of the list for a lot of gaming executives, as well as a lot of gamers out there wondering why in the world everything was getting so expensive. Now, I think one thing that all of us can agree on, whether it's through some of these articles that I'm about to go through or whether you're just a gamer, is why is it getting so expensive? What are you doing? I feel like I'm not getting my money's worth out of a lot of these games. And honestly, this is something that has reached such a vast majority of people that I believe the tide is about to turn. The money in AAA gaming is absolutely insane lately. It's something that a lot of us couldn't even imagine. Many Hollywood movies are not made and have the budgets the same that some of the games out there have today. And a lot of it has to do with graphics versus experience. Over here on the New York Times, as you can see, an article by Zachary Small, December 26, 2024, video games can't afford to look this good. One way to understand the video game industry's current crisis is by looking closely at Spider-Man's spandex. For decades, companies like Sony and Microsoft have bet that realistic graphics were the key to attracting bigger audiences by investing in technology that have elevated flat pixelated worlds into experiences that often feel like stepping into a movie. Designers of last year's Marvel Spider-Man 2 used the processing power of the PlayStation 5 so Peter Parker's outfit would be rendered with realistic textures and skyscraper windows could reflect rays of sunlight. That level of detail did not come cheap. Insomniac Games, which is owned by Sony, spent about $300 million to develop Spider-Man 2, according to leaked documents, more than triple the budget of the first game in the series. What's so interesting about this is that game developers for the longest time have been promising the biggest and brightest and the best, and eventually we're going to have graphics that look so good that you can't tell the game from reality. And the reality is that a lot of gamers don't seem to care about that. A lot of gamers care whether the game feels good. It's good to experience. It's something fun to play. And at the cost of these rising budgets and increasing prices in game development and increasing prices at the tender where you're trying to buy your games, whether you're buying from Steam or elsewhere, it's interesting to see how games that once could cost $40 to $50 are now upwards of $70, and in some cases for special editions, hundreds of dollars. And you don't even get cool helmets and stuff anymore like you did back in the day with the release of Halo 3. All of this to say is that graphical fidelity seems to be something that gamers generally don't care about in the modern day. And what do I mean by that? Well, if you go over here to an article from last year, dating September 11th, this was all over the place. Stop me if you've heard this one before, please don't. But if you do stop me, hit that like button on the way out. Over 80% of players, this is from Tech for Gamers, over 80% of players choose performance mode on PS5, the stats reveal. Okay, it's unsurprising to claim that many PS5 players prefer the performance mode over the fidelity one. Many often sacrifice visuals to attain the best performance in FPS possible. However, we did not have official statistics in the past to proved performance mode's popularity. It only relied on the majority's hearsay and their opinions over the internet forums like Reddit. Now, multiple sources affirm that a huge chunk of PS5 players prefer 60 FPS over anything else. And going even further into this, you kind of wonder, I mean, the 60 FPS promise has been made for a long time. Heck, I remember when we started this channel, my friend and I, years and years ago, you can find the video, where we were looking at the showcases for the brand new consoles and the console wars. And we were wondering if they were actually going to be able to reach 60 FPS. And a lot of games were promising 4K at 60 FPS. And this was back in like 2018 or 2019. I forget, this channel's been around a while. And the ballooning cost of the games to try to achieve this crazy graphical fidelity in 4K, which it seems that a lot of games can't even do and some systems can't even run properly, are coming at the sacrifice of player experience. Why is it that, for some reason, these game companies decided that we're going to go for graphical fidelity over player experience. You know, that things that gamers have always liked. There's a reason that people play video games and enjoy that as their main hobby instead of watching movies or television or reading books or even comics or whatever it is. And that's because there is an experience there that you can't really get anywhere else. And visual fidelity oftentimes doesn't necessarily relate to the most maximum amount of player experience that you can get. For instance, one of my favorite games of 2024 was Power World. I put in almost 200 hours in that game and I absolutely love it. I still haven't gone back to play Faybreak yet. And the game that I'm addicted to that released late 2024 was Path of Exile. Now, one can say it absolutely looks beautiful, both of those games, and they're right, but they're definitely not photorealistic, and they definitely are not considered the top tier, most graphically beautiful games on the planet. But another thing that we have to ask is, why chase this? And did it pay off in dividends? Well, the fact of the matter is, no. Chasing graphical fidelity has risen the cost of game development to astronomical levels, and in addition to that, slowed down development time in these AAA studios and even some AA studios just to try to achieve these higher graphical fidelities. Over here, if you check this story out, which is the future of storytelling, with Ken Levine. He is the ex-BioShock developer, and BioShock being one of the premier games from back in the day that everybody loved. He says, I think one of the problems we have in this industry right now is that games have just gotten bigger and bigger, and graphical capacity has gone up and up. Just creating a door now versus creating a door 10 years ago just takes a lot more time because you have normal maps and traders and higher polygons and physics and all this other stuff to contend with. Everything's getting more expensive, especially in the big AAA space, because they're spending the most money. So graphical fidelity, although somebody decided years ago that it sounded like a good idea, and I think a lot of us were on the same page, we're like, hell yeah, graphics that look really good. But once we started to realize the cost of graphical fidelity, once we started to see that we were getting games that seemed a little bit more shallow, they were taking longer to come out, and I had to pay more to get less of an experience, a lot of gamers have pretty much decided, I'll take less graphics, I'll take less graphical fidelity, as long as you can provide me with a fun time, something that I can sink my teeth into. As prices are rising throughout the economy, as inflation is going up, most gamers out there are picking and choosing the games that they purchase a lot more stingily. Is that even a word, stingily? Or they're being more protective of their money in their wallets versus how they used to be, especially because we're not kids anymore and our summer money can't just go to video games. We have houses and rents and cars and insurance and all this stuff that we have to pay for, and children. And when it comes to buying video games, we might only buy 1 or 2 a year. And so that experience matters to us the most. And that's something that I think a lot of people don't realize or didn't realize up until 2024. One of the craziest things that I saw, it's actually an article that just dropped today, was the cost of the yearly Call of Duty. This absolutely blew my mind. From GameSpot, this is crazy. Call of Duty budget reportedly as high as $700 million per game. And if I am not mistaken, doesn't Call of Duty release a game every year? So from George Yang on January 7th, big video games take a lot of money to make, but the industry is very secretive in exactly how much is spent developing it. However, it looks like we might have some insight on how much money it takes to make and market a Call of Duty game. In a court filing reviewed by GameFile, Activision's head Call of Duty creative Patrick Kelly reportedly revealed the total budgets and copies sold for 3 Call of Duty games. In 2015's Black Ops 3 reportedly took developer Treyarch over 3 years to make, and the cost of $450 million, with a total number of copies being 43 million. For 2019's Modern Warfare, developed by Infinity Ward, the total cost of development was reportedly $640 million, with 41 million copies sold. Okay, the last one is Black Ops Cold War from 2020. Treyarch and Ravensoft joint project took $700 million to develop and sold 30 million copies. That is an absolutely astronomical number. When you're talking about $750 million to make a Call of Duty game, I mean, don't get me wrong, it makes its money. People play them like crazy. Heck, I know here in my house, we play them occasionally as well. It's something that's fun. My kids can kind of get into it as well, and we play them with them. And it's just an easy thing. Turn off mics, turn off everything, and we have fun as a family just playing multiplayer. But $700 million, $750 million, almost, that's absolutely insane. And what are gamers? What is the end user getting out of all of this? What do graphics and higher fidelities and all of this stuff and bigger game sizes? I mean, I remember Modern Warfare from 2019. My good Lord, I was playing it on an Xbox at the time, and it was like 230 gigabytes to download. So my games take up more space. My games cost me more money. And my games are ultimately providing me with either the same or less of an experience than I had before. In fact, some of the games that I'm having the most fun with now are games that are costing me a lot less, from AA developers, no less. So the question is this chase? Was this chase for that Hollywood graphics, which I think is actually a problem here? I did a video a while back saying that DEI wasn't the real problem in gaming. It was quite a few other things that started in gaming before DEI ever became a thing. And I think because of that money chase, that money hunger, and losing the ultimate sight of giving that player experience, that's why so many of these companies decided to chase something like that, something that didn't really make a lot of sense. And that's because of the big money involved, whether it's from investors or the big money involved just in trying to produce these absolutely massive games. One of the things that I thought was really, really interesting was from the first article that we checked out at the beginning of this video from the New York Times. And I want to go over here because it's something that's very interesting and it's something that I can relate to. And from Zachary Small again from the New York Times, December 6, 2024, scrolling down. It's very clear that high-fidelity visuals are only moving the needle for a vocal class of gamers in their 40s and 50s, said Jacob Navok, a former executive at Square Enix who left that studio known for the Final Fantasy series in 2016 to start his own media company. But what does my 7-year-old son play? Minecraft, Roblox, and Fortnite. And he said, Joost Van Duren, a market analysis and professor at New York University, said it was clear that younger generations value their video games. Playing is an excuse for hanging out with other people. Playing is an excuse for hanging out with other people. Yeah, it always has been for me. In fact, all of the games that I like to play are generally games that I can play with my friends. Some multiplayer aspect, a way to get the old crew back together, or something that my wife and I just sit down and play together. You see, player experience matters a lot. And somewhere along the line, around the talk of 4K, 60 FPS, and life-like realistic graphics, a lot of these AAA gaming companies forgot about, or were forced to forget about because of the money involved, about the end user, the player experience, right? It all came down to the dollars. They started thinking, well, if we spent this much money on a game and we made that much money, then if we spend this much more money times 2, we'll make that much more money times 4. And all of it came at the cost of player experience. And all of it came at the cost of job losses for many industry professionals. How many thousands of developers lost their jobs last year? Some of them probably didn't need to be hired in the first place because, well, it wasn't a sustainable model to hire as many people as they did. And some of them were high ranking. Some of them were guys that had been around for a long time, knew what they were doing, and lost their jobs. A lot of developers left in 2015, 2016, and started up their own studios. And now we're going to see the fruits of their labor 10 years later. You see, high graphical fidelity, I think, is something that is nice in games, but it's not necessary. What really matters here, and what I hope a lot of people are finally paying attention to from all of these different stories across the industry, is that end user player experience. If you actually go over to the Ken Levine story, you'll find out that he was talking about the end user experience, the player experience, playing the games, going through the story. He wasn't just talking about the cost. In fact, most of what he was talking about was how to make the player engage with the game. That is something that I hope the rest of the industry pays attention to, because the fact of the matter is, these ballooning costs, they're getting ridiculous. They have been ridiculous. They have caused studios to do wild and just stupid things and gamble on stuff that just didn't pay off. Anybody heard about Concord? Didn't pay off. They gambled and lost, right? How many games last year came out? How many big stories came out where we're just like, man, another flop of 2024. AAA Gaming's over. It's dying. It's dead. It's never going to come back. Well, my theory is get the investors out of AAA Gaming. Reduce the size of these companies. Scary thing to say, I know. Everybody says we don't want people to lose their jobs, but the fact of the matter is if their jobs aren't providing something for the end user, then maybe those jobs shouldn't have been created in the first place. It's a scary thought to think about. It's market contraction. But if they start focusing on what made those players experience, go back to Halo 2, Halo 3, or even Halo 1. That put gaming on the map in a way that just hasn't ever been seen before. Gaming changed because of Halo, the first 3. It was events. People were flying all over the country to go and hang out at the midnight releases in New York and Chicago. You could feel that energy, even if you weren't there. And if you couldn't be there, you were trying to find videos of people hanging out there the nights before. It was absolutely insane. That experience, that thing that brought us all together, that thing that made gaming for many of us, it was forgotten because the dollars got too big and they started focusing on becoming like Hollywood with shiny visuals and less on what the players actually wanted and what players will tell you they need. So ladies and gentlemen, I personally think that this is a very hopeful message. I think that AAA Gaming is about ready to turn around. And if it doesn't, that's fine, because a lot of the guys that worked at the AAA companies started their own companies. And they are now in the AA space. And I believe if they do their jobs well, they will become the new AAA space. And hopefully, just hopefully, they don't chase that, golden pot at the end of the rainbow. And they just chase that player experience that will tell players to come back time and time and time again. Because that's what we used to do. And I honestly believe that we can get back to that as well. I'm not a doomer. I don't believe that everything is over. It's all over, where the best of gaming has been behind us. No, I actually believe that the best of gaming is still yet to come. And maybe I'm foolish for thinking that, but I can't give up the way that I feel, because I have 4 kids myself. And I want to leave them with a hopeful message that no, guys, best days are around the corner. So hopefully you guys feel that way as well. And if you don't, hopefully this video shows you the tides are turning. And yes, the best days are yet to come. So thank you all so much for checking out the video. If you guys like what I had to say here, check out my most recent Path of Exile reviews. A lot of people had some things to say on that. Those were fun. And I do appreciate all the brand new subscribers to the channel from the Path of Exile videos. That was absolutely insane. If you guys are interested in any merch, I've got some merch in the links down below. And as always, until next time, cheers, everybody.